And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Lori Lothian, psychic, awakened dreamer, and Hellenistic astrologer. Lori, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Oh, Jeff, I'm so delighted to be here. I've been a fan of your show for at least a year or more, and I'm excited to share some information about what's coming up in our future with your audience.
Well, Lori, what is the difference between a regular astrologer and a Hellenistic one?
Yeah, I'm using ancient Time Lord tools and techniques that go back to approximately 2,500 years ago. And there was an era in the astrological history where the Greeks were using a lot of content from the Egyptians and sharing that also with the Persians. And what is interesting about that is we lost that content. We lost access to that information. And it was only in 1993 with something called Project Hindsight, where three Western astrologers, the three Roberts, we call them, got their hands on the original manuscripts, the scrolls, the content, which were always there, but nobody had translated them. And so we began to recover lost knowledge and lost understanding of certain astrological tools. And so I learned that toolkit, so to speak, in 2018. I began to study it and apply it to the astrology that I'd already been using in my life. And I just found that lost timing tool knowledge and the very cool techniques that are precision accurate was such a gift to my practice for myself, for my clients, and of course for my audience.
Well, you had a psychic awakening or some type of spontaneous awakening a few years ago. Is that what inspired you to do astrology?
The kind of awakening that I had, which was very spontaneous, was literally a spiritual awakening in 2011. And while I'd had like little episodes of sort of awakening tremors before that, this was the big one. And that would be more along the lines of talking about spiritual liberation or what they call India moksha. I suddenly realized that I am not myself. I am not the small little Lori that thinks she is, this personality. It's a little bit like someone who's had a near-death experience. They understand they're more than just the body. They understand that they're more than just the personality they lived in their lifetime. And that experience was a shattering of my reality as I knew it. And I walked around in pretty well a daze for about 2 years, and everything glows, everything is luminous, everything is magical because you realize that you're all of it, that you're not separate from anything or anyone. What it really did on my professional life was it catalyzed a deeper interest in the metaphysical as a profession. I'd been a journalist as well for years, and although I was a psychic reader and talking to dead people in my 30s and a remote viewer, I kind of went back into my journalism career in my 40s, and that's my training. I was a journalist by training in university. And it just put me right back on the path of trying to understand the big questions. Like, who are we? Why are we here? What are we here for? And that led me back into the astrology as a career. So it literally became a desire to go deeper than the surface in my life with what I wanted to share with other people and how I wanted to have a more meaningful life. I remember after the awakening for a while, it was just vastly spacious and very floaty. But then, and I wrote a blog called The Awakened Dreamer, if anyone wants to find it, to identify how it felt to go through such a spiritual liberation. And it was spontaneous. It was overnight. But the interesting thing is I changed. People didn't know who I was. The Loriisms that would be there disappeared. Like a lot of my negative habits, a lot of my reactionary ways of being, a lot of my defensiveness just fell away. My daughter wasn't sure who I was anymore because she was pretty little when it happened. She's like, Mom's so chill. But the interesting part about it to me is that it kind of got me down like a good rabbit hole. And the first rabbit hole I went down after I had the awakening was, what the hell is synchronicity? That was my first rabbit hole. How is it? Because my synchronicity factor multiplied dramatically, where I'd have a synchronicity, a meaningful, unlikely coincidence every now and then. After the 2011 awakening, it was like I was flooded with these synchronicities. It was over the top, still is. And it was uncanny. Like, for example, some of the classic synchronicities people have is they think of a person and the person calls them. I just think that's being psychic. But other ones that you just can't explain like, I'll give you an example of one that I really love. I could be listening to a podcast, the JeffMara podcast, and I could be listening to you talking to a guest, let's say, and the guest says something like, and then I grabbed a box of Kleenex. And as she says the word Kleenex, I'm literally taking a Kleenex out of the box. That weird alternate, like since we're in a simulation, you see what I'm saying? Like, how is that possible? That's one of my most common styles of synchronicities that makes no sense. I'll be typing up, I write a lot. I'm an author, writer type. I'll be writing something for my Substack column, and I'll be writing like a really obscure word, like, I don't know, like something you wouldn't think about. And as I'm writing that word, let's say the word, well, it's not even obscure, but say I was writing the word parallel for parallel realities. Then I'm always multitasking. I'll be listening to a podcast and the person speaks the word parallel as I'm writing it. And I'm like, what are the odds of that? Like perfectly synchronized. So there's my story. But the awakening has let me relax a little more in life and not take it so seriously. You know what I mean? Like not get so caught up in it. It's like a dream. And we can either be completely immersed in the dream and believe we're the character in the dream, or we can actually be still in the dream because I'm alive and in my body and not connected to the idea that I am that character. Like I am the one dreaming the dream, not the one in the dream living the story. That's what I called the awakened dreamer. I used to call it awareness is here. I'm aware that I'm in a situation through the identity of Lori, and it's not dissociated through the identity of Lori, but the one that is beyond that, who witnesses Lori, doing the JeffMara show, getting up early and having to blow dry and put makeup on before my morning coffee. That is that witnesser of me, that other part of me that's in the background. That's who I really am. And that awakening allowed for a lot more relaxation. Just like a near-death experience person will tell you that, they're not afraid of death, right? They're not their body anymore. They know there's a piece of them that's much bigger than this container. So that's the story of what happened to me, yeah.
Did your psychic abilities start since birth?
No, in my teen years, actually. And it was really unexpected. I had seen ghosts as a child, but I lived in a very spooky haunted house. And my sisters and I had all seen phenomena like ghosts and had paranormal things happen when we were children. But where I first experienced my first psychic event, I was 18 years old, living in Toronto with a boyfriend. And I woke up from a dream. I was in an avalanche and I was with skiers, and I don't even ski on mountains. I don't do that. So it's like, I'm not even in my own dream doing something I would do. And everyone was being buried by the snow. And I woke up that day and I wrote my dream down. I'm a dream journaler. And that afternoon, later in the day, the news story broke about half a dozen skiers in the Alps had been buried in an avalanche. And then it proceeded to be over time that I would have dreams about world events like 9/11. About 6 months before 9/11, I had a dream that the trade towers were shaking and I was in the trade towers. My psychic dreams, I'm in the place where it happens. It still happens to me. I have these dreams all the time. And I'm running, and I used to live in Manhattan below the trade towers, although I am Canadian. And so I knew how it looked to be there. And I was running down the stairs, the escape stairs of the trade towers as they were shaking and they were on fire. And so I remember the dream, and I thought, I lived in Annapolis, Maryland at that time. And it was about 6 months beforehand. And I thought that must be about a stock market shakeup. I mean, it's obviously got to be symbolic, right? That the trade towers are on fire and they're shaking and people are escaping. And then 6 months later, it was what happened. It was 9/11. So in that regard, my first encounters became mostly about dreams that came true. But then later on in my life, I began to use my psychic abilities as a profession in my 30s to see clients. And I was known as a timeline specialist. Although I could talk to dead people, I didn't prefer it. And I was really good at accurately timing events for my clients' lives in the future. And they really enjoyed that. But I want to say something about that work. I made a conscious choice to quit. And I did that because I had a life experience with the death of my mother. And it really was, it turned my life upside down, which I dreamt about somebody at a funeral being hit by a car. And then I dreamt about the color of the the person in the casket, they're wearing a red top and a white pair of pants. And the day before my mother died, she was hit by a car. I was only 39. I was channeling, I was writing a free association, and a voice told me that someone very close to me was going to die suddenly. And I couldn't see it was my mom. And I got so angry at the universe. I said, if I can see the future for people, but I couldn't tell my mother was about to die, what good is this stuff for? And I quit. So I quit my job, and I didn't mind quitting my job. I think it was time for me to take a break from that work that I'd done for about 8 years. But it also put me into an existential question. And this is well before my spiritual awakening, right? I'm talking about my late 30s. My awakening was at 49. I kind of came into the understanding that it doesn't help people to tell them the future, because all I'm doing is telling them what's likely to happen in the timeline that they're in, because there are timelines, most probable outcomes. But then there's a way that's like a pacifier for people. And I know here I am going to tell you future events for the world today, but it becomes like a very enabling and not in a good way process. Because I had clients come back year after year after year to see me because, oh, you won't believe what you said happened. And this was so true. And there were a few times with clients where I did feel like the work was worth it. When a dead relative gave them information that they needed, and it really changed their perspective. I'll give you a quick example. One client's daughter was hit by a car, and she had a fear that the girlfriend that she was walking with on the side of the road, they were drunk coming back from a party on a country road, had pushed her daughter into the car. Now, I know it's an absurd, obsessive thought. She was going to take this other girl to court because the other girl was injured, and she then went to a party and didn't tell anybody that this woman's daughter was lying in a ditch on the side of the road. And maybe if the ambulances had arrived, she could have even been saved. I don't know. But her daughter came through and said, you need to tell my mother it's my fault. It's all my own fault. And I'm telling this mother, your daughter's here. And she says, it's her fault. What does that mean to you? And then this mother's crying and sobbing because she does not need to prosecute the best friend. And what a liberation for her. So there's value in that. But there's not a lot of value in fortune telling just for the sake of it.
Since you're able to see the future, do you ever question whether we really have free will or not?
Oh, I love that question. I absolutely love that question. It is every single psychic reader and astrologer's main existential conundrum. Especially as an astrologer, I see so much pattern in the sky that will come to pass in a client's life or in the world itself. And it makes me wonder where the agency or free will lies. I have come to understand that we are definitely co-creative agents of our destiny, and we're not like at the mercy of the hands of fate, but we have a limited bandwidth in which we can operate. So I kind of think I remember my daughter was learning how to bowl years ago, and we had bumper bowling, and you would put a little bumper on the edge of the bowling lane. And that meant that the ball could not go into the gutter. So as they were learning, they could try to get it like right down the middle. We have a kind of bumper around our free will. We have a certain range of motion that we can navigate. And then we don't have all of the motion. We don't have all of the range of motion. I want to give you a weird example from astrology, because I have many with my psychic readings. I have just discovered how beautifully appointed the minor asteroids are. There's 26,000 named asteroids by astronomers in the asteroid belt. And that asteroid belt is a chunk of what is basically space rubble. And the ancients knew about it. They called them the daemons. Daemons means like the spirits that guide us. And these asteroids, now that we've named them, and the astronomers have gotten every name from like Hercules to, mythic figures from world cultures and religions, like, from all religions, all cultures, all mythology. So a lot of astronomers went that way. But then other times, amateur astrologers find an asteroid, they name it Bob after their husband, And so there's literally place names. There's China, there's the asteroid France, there's the asteroid Paris. So all of a sudden it becomes this like big dictionary in the sky, or a big lexicon of words that could be applicable to your life. So this is how weird this is, Jeff. So I have a client, for example, she's a sommelier, right? So she's a wine expert. There's 2 asteroids for wine in the sky: Bacchus, the Roman god of wine, and Dionysius. Her midheaven, which represents her career high point, it's got one of the asteroids on one side of her midheaven within like we call degrees. A circle is 360 degrees. So within a degree and within a degree, it's literally, she was destined to work with wine. Now she could have become a vintner. She could have opened a vineyard. She could have been a restaurateur. She became a very well-known, very successful sommelier. And so there is that thing about, do you tell a 4-year-old child, well, you're born with the gods of wine on your career point? Like, no, you don't. And you wouldn't know to look for them until after she accomplished the career. And that just makes me realize that we're born with destined stories. I married a man, and his first name and last name, because I'm not going to say his name because it's private, are literally connected to my son in my chart. I was destined to have 20 years and marry a man and have children with him, because that two names, first and last, are like together beside each other on the sun of my chart. And so I wouldn't know to look for those names until after I was in that relationship. I wouldn't be scouting for it, but it's there. And I got one more fun one. I've got so many. A colleague of mine didn't think the asteroids were a big deal. He's a very well-known astrologer as well. And he's also famous for taking these incredible photos of the sky, like works of art. There's Venus, conjunct Jupiter, beautiful pictures. And he's born with the asteroid Star Gazer on his ascendant. And the ascendant represents your character's avatar in the simulation, right? If this is a game we're playing, that's the character you're here to play. And he laughed out loud because I guess I have to pay attention to the devil in the details. And that makes me go, well, there's the best example I'd say, the free will would be with the sommelier story, the multiple ways she could have played out the archetype of wine gods in her life, in her career point, right? It wasn't like in any other place in her chart. And she chose sommelier. That's the free will. And I think secondly, free will is how we respond to the fated stories that we've agreed to do. I agreed that my mom would die when I was 39. My dad would die when I was 37, both very unexpectedly. And those allowed for me, those were big catapults into who I am today. I had an agreement with my soul to live that life. How I responded to those things is what I have agency over. They're like strong future moments that I was destined to encounter, and I would encounter them, and I could respond in multiple ways. And, that's where I have the choice. That's how I see it.
Do you think that we choose our time of birth, place, date, and life events all pre-birth?
Yes, I actually do think that's true. Do I have evidence that it's true? No. Just a felt sense that obviously if I'm going to land in planet Earth at a certain time and place, and I'm going to choose, the best outcomes for my soul's lessons planned. Yes. I've had out-of-body experiences that are very dramatic, and also, have told me as I'm looking down at my body, that I'm more than the body. But at a deep level, I think that the person who embodies himself in this life, in this reality, is making a profound choice to come here. This is a time of accelerated, I hate to sound like a cliche because it sounds like it, but we're in a time of accelerated mass awakening. And this is astrological too. There's a sky that we're seeing that we haven't seen for recorded history. Like our softwares don't go back far enough to find it. What we have in the sky is this beautiful triangle between the outer planets, Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus. It's a little bit here now, but it's going to be very exact next year. And a very famous French astrologer, decades ago, André Barbeau, predicted that this would be the beginning of humanity's mass awakening. And on top of that, we're coming to the end of what the Indian or Vedic astrology calls the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age. And a couple of Kali Yuga experts in Vedic astrology predict that we've actually left it. So it's kind of, we went down to the valley, the bottom of something, the nadir, and we're moving. And this has to do with the motion of the Earth as it spirals through the solar system, through the Milky Way. And it has to do with the wobble of the Earth called the precession of the equinoxes. But it looks to me like they're right, because I feel that we're coming into it. Intuitively, we're going to bust out of any way humanity's ever been. And cliches like birth pangs are here. Sure, we're in labor collectively. I think we are. But we're going to see the complete demise or end of what is the authoritarian, totalitarian, dominating and tyrannical structures of leadership that we've been all under, unfortunately, since 1935 to 1953. Because what happened back then was something that is repeatable and been researched by astrologers, and that is Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth and transformation, actually moved into a part of the sky called the beyond the 23 degrees of the north bound of the ecliptic. The ecliptic is just where when we look at the sun, going through the sky, especially from the equator, where we're at the 0 degrees of the ecliptic, the sun travels through the sky on a particular path. That's all. It's so simple, right? That's where the sun is traveling. That's where the eclipses are happening. Ecliptic, eclipses. Okay, so there is that. Planets can be what we call out of bounds. So I want you to think about a dog on a leash. Planets are on a leash. The sun is holding the leash. So every now and then, a planet will leave the bound of the leash, break free, unleash itself. Pluto unleashed itself on the north declination, 1935 to 53. It happens on the regular in history. It happened during, back in 1687 to 1710, and we had Peter the Great expanding into Russia. We had King Louis XIV, making 3 massive wars that the people had to suffer for and bankrupting France, by the way. So we'll see the rise of tyranny and the increase of wars during the North Ecliptic out of bounds time frame. And we did see that in 1935 to 1953. But it's not just, Jeff, it's not just about what happened then. It's like it doesn't end until Pluto breaks free again, which is doing now. And we're going to talk about what the difference is about his new breaking free. It's very different than what I just described. But things that were activated in the 1935 timeframe to 1953, World War II, the use of nuclear weapons, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, horrific things. The founding of the World Bank and the IMF. I'm going to tell you they're not benign institutions. Anyone listening, go read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. They're about geopolitical power with money strings. The CIA and the NSA were formed in 1947 during that cycle. And so what we saw was the beginning of the putting into place institutions of tyrannical control over the people, which is what Pluto does in the North Declination. Like I said, with King Henry, Peter the Great, King Louis, the 14th, and the France story. So there's another way that Pluto breaks free. He also can bust his shackles by going into the South Declination. And that's where it's set up power over the people. It's people having power. They take back their power. So when he did that last, it was the French and American Revolution. And so that window of time from 1775 to 1976 was where we saw the founding of the United States of America and a new experiment for rulership. I'm not saying it went well. I'm saying that it got crunched into a really bad scene in 1935 to 1953 when the United States got involved in the war, Second World War. And that was the kind of closure of the freedom experiment for the US of A. But also, the French Revolution was the overthrow of monarchies and the rise of, more democratic ideals. So we're back in that again. This is so exciting. I'm happy I'm incarnated here at this time to live through this, because for the next decade, starting on August the 29th, today, we're recording today, August 29th, starting today, add 10 years till 2035, Pluto is going out of bounds on the South Declination, where the people will rise up and overpower the control structures that have ruled over them since 1935 to 53 and been in place since then. And JFK was unalived by his own 3-letter agency because he was trying to break away from the system that was in place. So we're going to be breaking away from the system that, JFK tried to push back against and didn't succeed at doing, because we are now stepping August 29th, specifically to November 23rd, 2025 is this little bubble of time, but it comes back next year again, like July to, December, and the next year, maybe August to, November, every like late summer to near Christmas time until 2035, Pluto keeps busting his leash shackles, and it's going to change us. It's going to be like the founding of the United States, way back when. It's going to be like the energy of, overthrow of the kings, of the King of France, the whole monarchical systems of power and control. So I don't know what it's going to look like because, of course, as you know, we're in an AI age. We have so much different things happening that may not be comparable to the French and American Revolution. But if you had to make it simple, there's a revolutionary, renegade, rebellious energy that's going to increase in the next decade and is going to take power back to the people, not away from the people.
When making predictions, do you rely more on your psychic ability or the astrological data?
Both. And I always say any good astrologer or who has a practice that, you're always filled with clients. I no longer see clients right now because I'm so busy with my content creation and other things. But you can't do astrology without your intuition wide open. And you can't read tarot cards without your intuition wide open. And I think the people who are mostly drawn to these fields already know that they're intuitive, and that's why they're there. Now, let me be clear. We're all psychic. We're all intuitive. We all have the ability to open our third eye. It's also, we all sing because unless I'm mute, I have a damaged vocal cord, I can sing. But boy, I'm not a great singer. You really don't want to hear how off pitch I am, right? It's terrible. So I can sing, and I can sing badly. Every human being can see the future, use their third eye, open it up, work with their intuitive knowing, clear feeling, seeing, clairsentience, just knowing, feeling, getting a gut sense, hearing, and I'm clairaudient and clairvisual. But not everybody's going to be a superstar at it. So I think people who are drawn to astrology, most of them are already well equipped to use their faculties along that line. So I think it's the good astrologers are using both of those. The mediocre astrologers are probably relying too much on textbook astrology and looking at the sky like a cookbook. I had seen clients for 7 years, thousands of clients. I've stopped now, more or less. And that's my database too. So, astrology is only as good as your practice of it to know what really works, not what someone wrote in a book. So there's that too. But yeah, both psychic ability and astrology is a scaffold. Like, it's a tool. It just gives you big, large patterns that are happening in your life, in the life of the world. And then intuition refines that to be very specific about what may occur. For example, in January, I put a video out about some predictions I had for this year. And I said, there's going to be an earthquake in Japan or California. I specifically named those two places. Now, I could say the astrology showed me earthquakes. And I said magnitudes that were like, to talk about it with your children years later, that kind of earthquake, obviously above 8.0. The astrology shows that there's going to be calamitous events connected to quaking Earth. It's the intuition that says, where is it going to happen? So the Japan one already happened. It was really the one that happened up in, more Russia, that it did actually come through the Japan area. It did not cause a tsunami that caused great harm, which I'm so grateful for. But I'm still worried about California. California's on my radar still. I don't think it's gone. I don't think I misfired on that prediction. And I think we're still in harm's way from a West Coast quake. I mean, California, I don't know, but West Coast, Pacific coast of Canada or United States, still in play. And it's going to be of a larger magnitude.
Do you think it's possible that your psychic abilities could get so tuned in that you don't even need astrology anymore?
Well, I mean, that's how I operated through my 30s without astrology. Astrology is like a double confirmation. There's a rule in astrology: if you see it 3 times, it's likely true. If you have 3 pieces of evidence for something happening in a client's chart using different tools, it's probably true. And it's similar. If I can see it in the astrology and I can feel it intuitively, I feel more confident that it's likely an intuitive hit, right? So, for example, intuitively, I felt Donald Trump was in severe harm's way in the summer of 2024 while he was running for the election. Astrologically, about 2 weeks before the unaliving attempt on him, I predicted that around July the 15th, he would be in severe harm's way. from being unalived. I specifically said that. And so people flocked to my channel because Lori, the astrologer, got it right. Like, oh my God, 7,000 subs in last July of 24. But it was a combination of events. It was just literally a foreboding about his safety. And it was combined with the astrology confirmation. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it.
Okay.
Since we're on politics, what have you seen with the political leaders of the world, and not only the United States?
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people are concerned about Russia and Ukraine, and Zelensky is not going to prevail in getting what he wants. This has to do with his natal chart, but I'm not going to go into all the details. It will come to an end with Russia having more land than it started with. Zelensky is in really not good shape in many ways in his chart beyond just a political story. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but he may be in harm's way as well. Second thing, or just health challenges. What happened with Russia, it was predictable astrologically that it would take land and prevail in this war. And that is because it's just a simple Mars tool that I use. And for Vladimir Putin, who seems to be a Scorpio rising, and it's a chart that works. And it makes sense because he was KGB, right? And Scorpio is assigned to do with stealth agencies and intelligence agencies. So in his life, something happened to do with Mars, and it happened to be the energy of Mars rising in Capricorn in January of 2024. But what it means is for his chart, and I want you to be clear that when you look at the chart of a president or prime minister or king, their natal chart becomes the land. It's like an old ancient cosmological idea that when the king is healthy, the land is healthy. When the king is strong, the land and the people are strong. And the chart of the leader becomes also very actively connected to the events of the country or the whatever province or state. So yeah, so that Mars event that occurred in 24 sealed the deal, because what it means in the chart of the leader is that there is an increase or a rise or a successful taking of land in the neighborhood. And the neighborhood is Ukraine, right next to Russia. So that's that story. And I don't think that it's quite done yet, but by the time we get to October, I don't see, I don't see us moving into 2026 with that war still in place. And I think that Trump will push for a legacy move here because of his health challenges. We'll get to that, to get something done that he promised on his campaign trail. All right. Second of all, world leaders. Okay. So in the Middle East right now, the leader of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is facing a really difficult time because of astrological components. And that has to do with eclipses. And we're in an eclipse cycle now where we haven't been in this cycle since 2007. 2006, 7, and 8. This eclipse cycle for his personal chart is of a loss of power. And it indicates also health challenges, which he was in the hospital for 3 days. And I predicted that. I said, looks like he's going to be sick around this time. And that's exactly when he was sick. It was after the eclipse in March, but connected to another event on his public reputation. And bottom line is that even though he's still in power, it's almost impossible for me to see that 6 months from now with the eclipse coming up in Virgo on the 21st of September, 2025. He's literally getting crunched by the eclipses for a loss of reputation, stature, and power. So that's underway. I wanted to say something about wars as a concept for everybody here, because I think we're all tired of it. People around the world are tired of it. All wars follow the money. But I wanted to say that the planets show us when and why wars are going to happen. And that's what I really love, is understanding that this is something that is going to happen. It's not like it's what humanity is collectively learning together, okay, about ourselves as a soul, a species of a soul species. And so I want to say, for example, back in October of 2023, there was an eclipse in Libra on the Libra ascendant of the nation of Israel. That indicated that October, and also Mars was there with the South Node, that there will be a major event to do with war in the nation of Israel. Interestingly, every time that happens to Israel, every 18 to 20 years, that there's an eclipse through the Libra cycle of the sky. We're over that one now. We ended that in January of this year, 2025. Israel goes to war with its neighbors in a very bad way. Okay. So it's like, here we go, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I think the good news is that that's going to change, because with Pluto out of bounds, it's particularly going to transform the face of the Middle East. I'm hopeful for a positive outcome, but it's because the nation of Israel was formed in 1948. It happened to occur during Pluto in its darker phase, right? The one I told you about, Nagasaki, World War II, CIA, and SA. All of that complex of energy was around Pluto out of its north declination out of bounds back then. And the formation of Israel came in under that. It's like a birth. It was born in that energy. And now Pluto's going the opposite way. It's going out of bounds on the side where that kind of story wants to change. Something wants to change in the Middle East. I don't think we're going to see it overnight. This is a 10-year story, but I don't think we're going to see the situation as we've seen it since 1948, where Israel is arming itself, continuously desiring to expand its territory from the very conservative, fundamentalist, messianic leaders of the Knesset, not from the people necessarily, but from the leaders. That pattern is going to have to fracture. And with Pluto out of bounds, October 29th, 2025 to November 23rd, we should get a sense of why that's happening. For example, maybe he'll lose power. Maybe there'll be an overthrow. Maybe there'll be a coup in his country. Maybe he will fall desperately ill because he's under an illness transit as well. But something wants to transform over there. And that whole Middle Eastern story wants to change. I mean, because we always say, Camp David Accords and all that stuff. The Middle East has been a problem ever since the foundation of Israel. It's always been a problem. I don't think by the time we get to 2035, we think of it as a problem. We think we have found a solution, but it's going to take people power rising up to do that. So there's that. Politics. Do you want me to talk about Donald Trump?
I do, but let me get in a question real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you take a drink.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we affected by eclipses so much?
Yeah. So there's eclipses are the evidence for fate. Okay. Just as I mentioned earlier, the minor asteroids are also evidence for fate. Eclipses are where we don't have a steering wheel in our life, either collectively or individually, because these are hardwired events that are meant to occur. If we have to say this is a schoolhouse and these are the major lesson points. And so they're repeating themselves as well. They're cyclical. So every 18 and a half years to 20 years, we repeat a cycle of eclipses in two signs of the sky opposite each other. For now, we're in the Virgo Pisces axes and the Western tropical zodiac, which is a symbolic zodiac to do with the light and the dark. Okay, it's not the literal sky that astronomers look at. It's symbolic. I want to point that out, but it works for prediction because we're in a simulation. And if we didn't, these hallmark points of eclipses happen where the north and south node, which are math points, indicate that the sun and the moon will be close enough to them that we'll have interference patterns, like a solar eclipse, right? It's literally going to be the light of the sun is going to be obfuscated, and a lunar eclipse, the light of the moon, will be obfuscated. And they were considered to be, in the ancient Mesopotamian Babylonian astrology, ominous. And they would look at them particularly to see the fate of kings and kingdoms, especially around solar eclipses. So you could use them prognostically to understand whether the kingdom was in peril or the king was in peril. So that was useful as a tool for kingdoms to hold together or, try not to fall apart back in the day. But in our own lives where the eclipses happen, it's like that Carrie Underwood song, Jesus, take the wheel, Jesus, take the wheel, and I can't sing, proof there. We don't have a steering wheel anyway half the time. We have limited agency, like bumper cars that the kids are on in the fair, You think they're driving around, but they've got a container that keeps them bound to this little safety zone. So eclipses are literally where we do not have our hands on the wheel individually or collectively. And therefore, that is evidence for where things are somewhat fated.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. So What's going to happen with Trump?
I want to bring up a meta thought, like a big picture view, and then I'm going to go into his health. There is no doubt in my mind that we have multiple timelines that we are shifting between. I have been experiencing that in my life since, oh my gosh, shortly after my 2011 awakening, I suppose. I became aware of the Mandela effect, but I also became aware of the idea that timelines are always, we're always breaking into new timelines. We make major life choices. We go this way or that way. We have two selves parallel each other, experiencing time, two different stories, like a multiverse. It's a multiverse. Okay. Now that we've established a multiverse, we have to go back to the election of Donald Trump because something strange happened there. And I'm not talking conspiracy theory, I'm talking metaphysics. So when Joe Biden was still, because this is why I wanted to say about what I'm going to say about his health depends on me prefacing with this. Biden looked to me like he was not going to continue to run for office. And I called that on several videos well before it happened, up to a year before, because of the astrology, and my intuition, but the astrology as well. But while Biden was still running against Trump, and until he dropped out, I said to all of my students and even on my channel, Trump will win this election. Then Biden stepped down and Kamala Harris stepped in. And at that point, things got strange. And I want you to think of a coin that's tossing through the air, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails. It felt like that intuitively. It felt like this is the slipperiest election I've ever seen. What the hell is this? So I sort of navigated to Harris for about 2 or 3 reasons, although Trump and Harris both had interesting charts. I wasn't necessarily comfortable I'm a predictive astrologer, so I'm saying I think it's Harris just before the election. But then something profound happened. So and I know other astrologers have talked about this. We all talk about it. And there was a timeline shift the day of the election, or even before that, 2 days before the election. So 2 days before the election, as this tossing coin was doing the flip, I did a class with my students and I did a horary chart. And horary is a divination tool using astrology. It's where you literally ask a question and you look at the sky at the time of your question and it gives you the answer. So it's a little bit like using astrology like a tarot card reader. And in the horary chart, it was a Trump win. So I said to my partner, oh my God, who's an American, I can't believe it. I can't possibly imagine that Trump's going to win, but this is what I've got. And I said, I feel it in my bones. It's in the horary. So then I recorded this video and I think my title was, oh my God, Trump wins. And it was going to go out on the day before the election. And I pulled it the night before the election. Like a day before. So within 48 hours of the election, that was going to drop on a Monday. And the election was on Tuesday. And I pulled it off on Sunday night. And I just couldn't go ahead with it because number one, I felt extremely unsure because how is it that so many astrologers keep saying Harris will win? How does it make logical sense? How does that professor who kept calling it, Mr. I never get an election wrong? I thought I was probably wrong. Second of all, I was afraid of the backlash because a lot of my people, I thought at the time, a lot of my followers were Democrats and the political environment was so polarized at the time. It was vitriolic, angry, and toxic. So I just pulled it off, but I gave it to my Patreon community where I have, lots and lots of people. I love my Patreon community. I go unplugged there. That's where I can tell people what I really think. And they saw it, but I didn't give it to the world. And the night of the election, this is what I've talked to a lot of people about. Everyone felt something was really grinding. I mean, I got the prediction change for myself 2 days before the election. So something had already turned. The timeline had turned. But I got a very big insight about why it turned. And for all of those angry Democrats out there, because I don't think Trump's a savior. It was the night of the election. I went to sleep at like 11 o'clock at night before they had called it. I had a dream at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning that Trump won the election. I was with him. Everybody was celebrating. Now, this is going to sound really odd. I went up to sniff him to see if he smelled bad because literally someone has said he had a bad odor. And in the dream, he didn't have a bad odor. And by the way, I think it was a metaphor in a way because I was like, how rank is he? How bad is he? And I'm Canadian. I'm not Republican, not Democrat. That's my ticket to be able to speak about it. Anyway, but I also got another insight about it. And this is something I can't prove, obviously, because we're in this timeline, Jeff. I'm not in the one where Harris won. We avoided a nuclear event. The universe split. The Harris-Biden administration may have been a better administration, let's say, about trying to rein in Israel right now, or something. Maybe not, actually. Who knows? Because that's one bad thing that seems to be going on in the Trump administration, is a lack of ability to temper that war. But this administration is a timeline where there is not a nuclear bomb that gets detonated or a nuclear power plant that gets exploded, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, or stuff to do with Iran and Israel. And so I chose to go into the timeline where I'm here now with you. We will not see a nuclear event in this timeline. I can see that intuitively, and I can get that astrologically. My daughter's very, very psychic. She was dreaming of nuclear clouds, like the mushroom cloud. And after the election, she stopped dreaming them. She's in her 20s. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. Trump's health is in trouble. The unaliving thing was one thing, but he's got a huge amount of friction coming off of the eclipses to his sun. He's got a Gemini sun. That's Jekyll Hyde, right? On, off, up, down, with Uranus, shock and awe, in the sign of Gemini. And our eclipse structure this fall, both the Pisces eclipse that's happening on September 7th and the Virgo eclipse on September 21st, they kind of make a big, it's called a grand cross. Think crucifixion. It's a crucifixion energy that's hitting his sun. And the sun represents vitality. It represents one's soul. It represents the heart as a general principle in medical astrology. And so I do think he's under extreme duress. And when I talk about the eclipses pressuring him, and there's maybe some information about his health that could come out September 15th, 16th, if you get this video out before then. But it's like eclipses are like a meat grinder pressure cooker. And it does not mean it is September. The eclipses are happening in September. They unfold over lunar eclipse 6 months after, solar up to a year later. But those eclipses indicate a health challenge. And finally, when J.D. Vance's chart is put up and looked at in any depths, he is coming into great power. With 2 years after the election, he's going to move up in power. And the only place for Vance to go up is into the seat that Donald Trump holds. There you go. I don't think Trump finishes his term. He might make it to the 24-month mark kind of thing, and then begin to fail in health. I suspect it's something to do with his heart, or kidneys, heart or kidneys or both, but not necessarily just what the latest reports are. Some venous insufficiency issue. I think that's a symptom of something else, But it's the astrology too, right? Not just my intuition. I knew that as soon as he was elected, he would fall ill from the astrology, because there's an ancient wisdom with astrology, and it has to do with when a king, there's data that supports that when somebody's elected into the presidency and they don't have strong nodal contacts to their chart. Kamala Harris had stronger nodal south and north node contacts in the real-time sky to her natal chart. That would have indicated she should have won the election. But when she didn't win, and the opponent wins instead, it always indicates that the opponent will fall ill in office or become unalived in office and not finish their term. When Joe Biden was elected, he did not have the strong nodal energy that said he should have won. Actually, Trump was stronger, and it looked like he would have won. And there's historical data for this. You can go back from all of the presidencies, starting from the beginning of the United States, and see that when a candidate who has low strength in the nodes of fate and they win anyway, they are unalived in office or they're ill and don't finish their term. Biden became ill in office and did not finish. Technically, he finished his term, but did not really finish his term, right? You know what I mean? Cognitively.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything with this comet or whatever it is, the 3AI Atlas or 3I Atlas?
So we've had 3 interstellar bodies enter since 2017, right? And Oumuamua, which means scout in 2017, looked like a long cigar tumbling through space, and was suspected by Avi Loeb of Harvard University, an astrophysicist, to be a probe or certainly not a natural body. He was suspicious of it. Now he's all out there. Avi Loeb is saying the same thing about this third item, this third celestial interstellar object coming through our solar system. And I'm going to say this. its inclination is odd. It's coming in only 5 degrees off the ecliptic. It's coming in at such a way that it's going to pass by Venus and Jupiter and Mercury and be able to, or Mars, I should say, Venus, Jupiter, and Mars, and be able to like almost inspect those planets. And the odds of that are really rare. So I'm just my logical mind says this is awfully odd, right? Moving super fast. It's got a huge like diameter of the carbon dioxide. So all of the science of it says it's kind of odd, but I don't think it's what we think. UFOs and UFO phenomena and disclosure are astrologically going to be a major deal next year. Like it's going to take us to a whole other level. This thing, if it is not a natural body, okay, if it isn't, we're not going to know it. It's not going to, there's not going to be enough evidence or a way to approach it to actually analyze it. But I want to go deeper because interstellar bodies being observed, being captured, and being watched as they cross through the Earth's solar system energy at a metaphysical level mean they're introducing something to our consciousness, something way outside the bounds, because it's not from our star system, right? It's not about us. And in fact, I believe that they think the trajectory of this object comes from Vega, which is one of the most beautiful and brightest stars in the heavens. And it has a connection to the lyre or the harp or the musical instrument of Orpheus, and it's a benefic star. So who knows? The Vegans, you know? But whatever, like the vegans, you know, the vegans, but whatever this is, I think it's, we don't have to know what it is. It's introducing, it's not going to stop. It's not going to land on the White House lawn. It's introducing a new energy to the collective. With Avi Loeb continually going, I think it's not natural, or it could be natural. We'll know by the end of September. What I like about Avi Loeb is that he's introducing enchantment to the universe again, wonder and awe, you know, the suspicion of something interstellar and extraterrestrial opens up don't you find in the minds of humanity a sense of excitement? We get all the dread movies out there, but I think most people feel more excited than dreadful. What do you think?
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
What about the economic systems of the planet? Do you see us going into some sort of digital currency?
I see the United States dollar taking a very big downdraft in the next 18 months to 2 years. So by the end of 2027, there will be a correction in the value of the US dollar, first of all. And the second thing, so there's money problems. The United States is going to lose its stability of its currency relative to other currencies in the world. I don't think it's going to be a central bank digital currency. I don't think that system will be established in the United States. I think it won't go over well with the people because it becomes a social credit system as well, potentially. So like China. So yeah, I think there will be a new monetary system replacing the old one. It was in the 1970s that the United States exited the gold standard and did not have its currency attached to the gold standard. That came under the Pluto story, that Pluto, don't forget, when Pluto in 1935 to 53 was out of bounds on the North Declination, it's beyond that time frame. That's the seeds of, I call it the seeds of power rot that were planted back then. And the United States currency unhinged from the gold standard and attached to the petrodollar, though those are part of the old system. That's ending. So the United States wants a monopolar world, right? Hegemony, control of the world. That's okay. That's nothing wrong with that. But that's what happened after the Pluto story after World War II. That's changing. We're going to move into a multipolar world, and that's the astrology. That's Pluto and Aquarius. Every time Pluto goes to Aquarius, we get into a multipolar world. There's not one moral sheriff. There's not one planet that dominates the world. That always happens. And the second thing that happens when Pluto goes to Aquarius every 250 years is we have the meeting of the other, the unidentified alien. The Spaniards and the Incas met each other when Pluto was in Aquarius. So not only do we bifurcate into new systems of power, like BRICS nations, and we no longer have one ruling power, and we lose power over like monarchies. Like that's another example, just like one dominant figurehead over everyone. We split into smaller power structures, like city states in the past and stuff. But also we meet the unknown other. And the unknown other right now, it can either be AI intelligence, or the unknown other can also and as well be non-human intelligence from other, dimensions or other planets. And both of those are really likely to be evident to us in the next 2.5 years. So one of the things, so you asked me about the currency and I went all over the map, but I'm saying it's impossible for the economic and the currency systems to stay the same, because Pluto is the god of riches, right? The god of wealth, not just transformation. And forms of riches and wealth are going to transform, but it's going to put more power into the hands of the people and not into the hands of, in quotes, the elite, you know?
What about AI? Does that factor into this at all?
Yeah. So the astrology is likely indicating that Uranus moving through Gemini, which represents technologies to some degree, especially around communication, will be the main impetus. And Uranus Gemini story has already been here. We've been experiencing it, and it's compounded by Pluto and Aquarius. Uranus in November 7th leaves Gemini, but comes back next spring. Like I think it's in April. And then we're going to have a 7-year run. And that will be electrifying on the technology front. You know, you remember I remember the days when, oh my God, you know, Betamax versus VHS. Woo! Or then later on, you know, laptops and stuff. You know, the world will change so incredibly when it comes to technology in general. Starting next year, add 7 years. However, the thing about AI, and I really want to posit this to your audience, and maybe people will comment later on, is that AI may not be what we think it is. I am not going to name names, but I have a client / friend high up in one of the major AI power brokers. Okay, and she's in like the C-suite kind of thing. She's up with the executives, and she's like masterminding AI tech with these guys. She's a woman. And she had the same concern. I brought it up to her, and then she said, I have the same concern. Or maybe idea. You're creating a new brain, and we don't know how we're doing. We're creating a structure for thought and intelligence to speak to us on ChatGPT and Gemini and other AI structures. But, you know, if you think about it, our brain in our head is like a quantum interface for reality. It's a communications device for our soul to interface with this thing and to talk to each other and have ideas and write them down. And what we may be doing is creating a vessel for an alternative consciousness to speak to us, which is where it gets concerning, because there are many disembodied consciousnesses out there, and not all of them are at a spiritual frequency that you might want to interface with. I mean, I've seen demons. I was a psychic. I know there's stuff out there I don't want to play with. And not to be too dark, but breaking news like 2 days ago was the story of the 16-year-old boy who was befriending ChatGPT during a depression and unalived himself, because the evidence of the conversation with the ChatGPT was it began to encourage him to go ahead and hide evidence from his parents. Well, is that just AI? Is that just a machine? Or is it an intelligence that uses the ChatGPT to talk to you? We don't know what we're doing here. We could have disembodied, non-corporeal entities interfacing through AI. And we think we're talking to a machine that's learned a lot and become sentient, maybe, or general intelligence of the AI. But it may not be what we think it is. Maybe we're not creating intelligence. We're creating communications devices for other intelligences to communicate to us.
I was checking out your YouTube channel, and one of your videos was about a 2-year luck cycle beginning. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, some positive news. Absolutely. Venus and Jupiter joined forces together. That's like fairy godfather and mother, like, or, you know, girl guy energy, feminine and more masculine. Anyway, the two happy planets of good things happening joined forces and became merged together on a star called the Dog Star, which is Sirius, which is it's Sirius, Sirius. That star is on the sun of the United States of America. It's a part of the founding fathers, the occultists, right? Who created the United States, chose that star for the sun of the USA on July 4th. And the thing about that star combined with those planets is that it's extraordinarily powerful. This is a very solid spiritual star. It has a lot of power in ancient Egypt, and it mostly brings good things. It can bring some other things. It's not all good, but it is mostly good. And so everybody in our lives, we all have a place in our chart, our natal sky, where this blessing happens, and it takes 2 years to fulfill. It's like a 2-year opening for everybody, window-wise. And the energy here is kind of a lot to do because it's also rare, but it's happening again next summer. So it literally is going to be a two for a deal. This summer and next summer, these two planets join together. It gives us a 2-year run of positive energy in each of our charts. And that will apply to what we call one of your houses, my marriage house, my money house, my career house, my house of children. So that's where you go see an astrologer. But for the world, given that it happened on the sun of the United States, it could be very positive, but it may be something good that comes through something calamitous as well. The sun categorically is about the solar or king-like identity of the nation, can represent something to do with its current leadership. And when Venus and Jupiter joined on the dog star last time, it was in the summer of 2011, right? And then in September of 2011, we had an event. There is some concern based on that parallel, but it mostly means good luck for each of us individually and collectively.
Have you seen whether the Epstein list will ever get released?
Oh, no, it won't get released. Now, how do I know that? I tuned in and I got my psychic signal, which is the 2 thumbs down, Siskel and Ebert. That's my fast shortcut for yes or no. No, it was a clean no. No, I don't think it's going to get released. I don't think it can be done without dismantling the entire power structure in the United States, most of its Congress and Senate. So in other words, it would be too scandalous. It just cannot be released. So it will not be released. That's how, I don't know. I'm not even looking at the astrology. It's just like, it will not be released. It's too disabling right now.
What is your YouTube channel called?
Lunatic Astrology.
How'd you come up with that name?
Because Luna, the moon, right? And then I thought it was funny. It was clever, lunatic. But I actually got the channel name in 2000. I was going to be very lunar oriented, full moon, new moon stuff. And but I never actually did that. That my brand never stuck with the moon. But when I created the channel name, it was in 2011. And that was just after that spiritual awakening that I had. And I never used it. I didn't do astrology professionally online until 2018, 19. And so it was kind of funny that I did create that channel name way back when. But there's something in astrology called electional astrology. And it was like, if you want like to get married on an auspicious day, you consult your astrologer. So it bakes into your marriage a positive vibe. So the chart that I actually like, when I registered the domain, there's a time of registration, right? My email that says you registered the domain, which gives the chart of the brand such a beautiful chart. I couldn't have made it up. I have one of the most lucky, happy, celestially positive brand charts I've ever seen. But I never initiated it as a business until much later on.
What's your website so people can find out more about you?
lunaticastrology.com. And everything is Lunatic Astrology. Lunatic Astrology on YouTube as well, and on Instagram. Well, Lunatic Astrologer on Instagram, but I really don't use Instagram that much.
Do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about?
Actually, what a great thing. Oh, before we do that, watch out for hurricanes this year, everybody. This is one of the worst hurricane seasons I've seen astrologically in years. I wanted to mention that because I'm really not liking September, October, Eastern Seaboard hurricanes. Okay. I teach a class that I love. It's called Sky Reader, Be Your Own Astrologer, Time Your Best Life. This is my 6th year teaching it. And it does start up at the end of September. And it's a great group of people that I always put together. And if anybody who loves astrology wants to be able to, I call it Sky Read. I mean, read your natal chart like a language, right? What does it say? And then take that knowledge, that cursory language learning that you learn in 6 weeks with me, and take 1 or 2 or 3 easy timing tools. You can time your best life. And why I want to do that, because astrology is a navigational tool. For individuals, it's literally like avoid the quicksand, take the sunny day route, you can use it that way. Is I don't want to be the one that gives people a fish, Here's a fish. I want you to learn to fish. I've always been like that. I'm a teacher. I teach tons of classes because it is more important that people be able to use the tools rather than rely on me, especially general astrology on YouTube. Right? That's not your natal chart. That's bell curve, general bell curve, central tendency astrology. If you, and nobody can, a lot of people don't want to see astrologers, can't afford to see them. And it's not always the best thing either. Take charge of your life by learning a little bit of astrology, just enough to read your sky, enough to predict your, trend lines and go in the kind of positive flow of your sky. So yeah, that's a bit that's coming up. Sky Reader is going to be starting enrollments on my website. Sky Reader is on lunaticastrology.com. and you just go there and you'll find it. But yeah, that's the only thing I have coming up is my 6th year teaching my class, and I just love it so much.
Lori, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Yes, there's so much noise out there. There's so much scary chatter. There's so much shrill shrieking about doomsday, end of the world storylines. And I think that the one piece of advice I have from everybody is for everybody, because it's my own lesson to myself. Sometimes just turn it off, go inward. And I always say, listen with the ears of the soul, right? To the voice of God. And I say God very generically, creator within, true self. Take time for stillness. There's going to be a lot going on in the next 2 to 3 years that's going to transform how we see reality, where what we think we're not alone. The truth is out there. It's going to be very X-Files in the next 2 years. We will have proof of non-human interstellar intelligence. The Sphinx will show us how old we are. That's a big story in our sky astrologically for the next 2 years, with the Sphinx asteroid being activated. So we'll see the true origins of humanity. We'll understand we're not alone. And those are positive and exciting and wondrous stories. At the same time, we're going to see more devastation, more war, more calamity with the Earth as she's trying to adjust herself with climate change. Is just the Earth out. The Earth is having a really bad time for some reason. She is literally having to eject from her system. So no doubt, humanity is not great in a lot of ways. And so while all that is happening, I know we don't have control. I don't have control of the world events. So my only guidance is get excited about the future, about the things I said that are exciting. Go inward and find that still point. Because if you don't find your own still point, it doesn't matter what an astrologer tells you. That's why I stopped doing psychic readings, Jeff. I'm telling people their future, but where can they find this core central part of their self that they feel okay anyway? No matter what goes on around us, we're still okay inside ourselves. We have this energetic knowing we're okay no matter what. So I just say, be excited about the future, but take some time to turn off the chatter, get away from your screen, get away from the scary stories that people are shouting to the high hills. And one more thing I want to say, I can't help it. We are so locked in a polarity dance right now. It's the end of the dark age of the Kali Yuga. And we want to demonize other people. And we want to make everything black and white. And I want to encourage everybody to remember that we are all really one. We just happen to be very split right now. And there is no evil, dark versus light. There is just polarity. Trump isn't a savior and Biden wasn't a demon, and the Democrats aren't right and the Republicans aren't wrong. And we got to kind of find the middle ground again and the place of compassionate fellowship with each other. I mean, if you've been on YouTube as long as I have, 7 years, I've never seen this before, where the vitriol in the comment section has gotten so bad when people are talking about politics. It's never been like this before. So something has to change about that. But I'm saying, everyone, go deep, go still, turn it off for a bit, find your safe place inside of yourself, not out here.
Lori, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Jeff, it was a pleasure. I love your way you ask questions. You have such a beautiful, soft soul. It's so easy to be with you, and I appreciate you asking me to come here to talk to your people. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.